Welcome to this episode of the Raising Capital podcast and YouTube show. I'm your host, James Tuckerman. If you have not done so yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. And if you are listening to this or watching this on your phone, and if you have never given us a review, please take a moment to do just that. You'll be helping other people find this show. You'll be adding juice to the algorithm, and you'll be helping us in ways that you can barely imagine at this point because the algorithms are so wild and weird. Now, this episode is proudly brought to you by the B2B-Podcast Network. If you are a B2B business owner, B2B-.io helps you automate over 90% of the client journey via one suite online platform. It's a funnel builder, a sales pipeline manager, a CRM all in one. You can use it to get more B2B clients and keep them forever. Now, today I have as my guest, Dr. Elizabeth Williams, who is CEO of you're going to have to correct me, but when I say it, it's Hemideina. Now, aside from leading Hemideina through a bunch of capital rounds, including a $10 million placement just last year, Elizabeth has a PhD in chemistry from the University of Cambridge and was awarded the BioMelbourne Network Emerging Woman in Leadership Award in 2018. Elizabeth, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Now, to kick things off, I've got a question for you. It's a roundabout question. Here it is. What's one part of the capital raising process that you thought would be easy but was hard? Or what was one part of the process that you thought would be hard but was surprisingly easy?
Okay, so the easy one, our technology is quite complex in terms of a cochlear implant itself, very complicated, and then the technology that we're trying to bring to that is even more complicated. So we thought we had it fairly down pat in communicating that in a layman's term. But yeah, definitely we noticed at the early start of the cap raise that there was a lot of questions, bit of confusion. So that was definitely a lot harder than we thought. So we solved that problem by making a nice animated video to really demonstrate how the technology works and how it's different. And then in terms of the hard piece, what we thought was going to be hard was really articulating kind of Hemideina's market position, the market forecast and how people, I think whenever someone shows a forecast sheet in their very early stage pre-revenue, there's not much belief in that sheet. And so we thought that would be quite hard in terms of really showing people we'd done the work and the evidence behind it. But actually, yeah, so we did. I guess that's why it was so easy, because we did do a lot of work and we had a really comprehensive view in the data room, and that really helped.
And I think that, yeah, they probably did get the concept after, you'd messed around with the words and you changed up the video. Explain to everyone, what is it? What's the elevator pitch? What is it in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, so essentially there's a significant unmet clinical need in the cochlear implant market. So 60 million people are eligible for a cochlear implant, and in the last 40 years, less than 1 million of those have received that treatment. And we think that our technology can solve the barriers by providing a device that's more discreet, fits in with the user's lifestyle, and provides improved hearing performance. And that's because the way that we process sound is we mimic how the human cochlea works, because we took inspiration and cheated by mimicking an insect system. And therefore we can preserve all the sound information that you need, that your brain needs to hear sound. And therefore we can provide a more natural hearing quality. That's the pitch.
That's great. So in a way, it's like it's a better mousetrap. There is a need, it's a proven need. There is technology out there, and you've just improved on what came before. Do you think that was an advantage or disadvantage coming in, particularly in Australia, where the cochlear implant is, it's almost like the Hills Hoist, really, isn't it? Australians are very proud of it. Do you think it was an advantage or disadvantage to be riding, not on the back of that, because that's wrong, but coming in as the next generation?
Yeah, we position ourselves as disrupting this market because we think, there's 5% penetration now. There's 95% of people who haven't got it that we think we can serve with our technology. And so it's a dual thing. So the positives are that everyone's heard the cochlear story. And, if you're a Cochlear Limited shareholder right now, you're pretty pleased because, they've got the implant sales, the annuity income from their services business. It is a great business. So it's a great model to show everyone Hemideina's in that market. So, there's a tangible pathway to us having a similar profile if you're an investor. But yeah, I guess then you're also looking at, there's this huge incumbent, and it's that David and Goliath perspective of how on earth are you going to get a position in this market when there are such established companies in there. So you do have to argue the fact. And one thing that helped us was we showed investors the history of this market. So we were kind of saying, 1997, Cochlear Limited had 85% market share, and there was this tiny company, one of their competitors, with 4%. Fast forward to today, that tiny company's now got 28% market share, and Cochlear at just over 50%. So that David and Goliath story has happened before, and we can do it again because we've got very different technology and a very different approach.
Wow. Do you find that having that type of story helps you as a leader, helps you, fire up the investors?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that's key in capital raising is the story and communicating that. So you've got to say why you're here, what you're going to do, and how you're going to do it. And I think that goes from kind of investors to building your team, recruiting people, and getting, one challenge for us is we are new to this market, so we don't have a track record of making quite risky implantable medical devices, and our approach is very different. So we have to build out a huge evidence base to convince people. And so part of that is getting people on your team and on board the narrative and the compelling vision that you're putting forward.
I hear this again and again and again, how important the narrative is. And right from the opening discussion, right from the beginning of our conversation, it was about communicating what it is that you do to people that might not otherwise get it. Let's talk about the very beginning, and let's talk about the first earliest rounds of raising capital. Have you been there right from the beginning, Liz?
Yeah, so I founded the company with my co-founder, Kate Lomas. So she's our chief scientific officer and the inventor behind the technology. And so we met when we both worked as scientists at CSIRO. And that's when she told me about her idea that she'd had long before. And yet we looked into the market, saw that there was this huge unmet need and that this technology could potentially solve that problem. And so one of our first, footsteps was we went into the MedTech Accelerator program. So it's MedTech's Got Talent, and we actually ended up being a wild card choice for that one. And then we ended up winning that competition.
Wow.
So that's a nice story to the start of the company, but it also gave us some very small seed funding to actually set up and put us on the track for our first raise. So we've done 3 raises to date. So first raise was $1 million, and the second round 4, and then this one has been the 10 million raise.
Yeah, wow. So who did you raise the different amounts from? So the first was MedTech. Was that money, or was that just guidance and support?
So both. So we got guidance and support as well as 40,000 in cash. So that helped us, secure some of our IP, actually do the groundwork, operational, setting up the business. And then the next 2 rounds are more kind of, the first round, family and friends, the triple Fs, and then moving to individual investors and kind of the family offices, high net worths. And this round we've brought in some VC investment. So
let's go right from the beginning, because the process that you went through is, really, it's part black art, it's part science. Everybody wants to know how you do it. We hear stories every second day about a Canva just, raising $3 million off the back of an idea. So the first $40,000, did they take a little piece of equity for that $40,000, or was it just part of a program that they have?
Yeah, quite lucky. It was just part of the program that they had. So it was like the prize money essentially for winning the competition. So that was
such a wonderful validation too, and we constantly need these stories of validation. Next round, the family, fools, and friends. That's what people say when the 3 Fs. Hopefully there were no fools in there. I gather that you raised about $500,000. Is that about correct?
Yeah. So what we did is we did a safe note process for that $500,000. So that's really where you're saying to these investors, if you invest now and we will raise. So at that point, then we had a target of at least $500,000. And then that safe note converts into shares. And that was just an easier way to raise money at that very early stage, and before you kind of have to go out and, get your shareholders agreement, all this other stuff in place. And so that was a really good vehicle for us at the early stage.
So let's delve into that a little bit, because you have a PhD in chemistry, not raising money or finance. How did you stumble across that mechanism and go, that sounds like a really good mechanism for us?
Yeah, so when I was doing my PhD, I joined a club. It's called the Cambridge University Technology and Entrepreneurs Club.
Aha.
And then, yeah, that's where I've always wanted to do. I think as scientists, we're passionate about getting the science to the end user so that you actually improve lives. And so I joined that club to really understand part of that translation and how you actually start a company, what on earth you do. So it gave a few foundations of, the elevator pitch, the different types of investors, and things like convertible notes and safe notes. So had an inkling. I'd never put them into practice. And actually one of our early investors also came to us and said a safe note might be a good way to go. So it's kind of a team effort, to be fair.
And did you go to a lawyer, or did you download a kit from the internet, or what was the process you went through?
Yeah, so we had an example that we got from the internet, but we ended up going to a lawyer to make it fit for purpose for us. And definitely, I think spending money on legal fees and getting it right at the start is one of my biggest tips, because to then go back and correct things, that's even more costly. And also you've already got investors on board. So it's about getting it right at the start, removing any red flags for them. So
my background's law, right? So I should know a little bit about this stuff, but I don't. I'm assuming that the mechanism works this way, where you can go out, you can raise 50 grand, it gets put into some sort of like escrow account, and you say, we're not spending that till we hit the amount that we want to hit. And then they feel cool about that, but that 50 grand gives you the courage and the confidence to go to the next person and say, do you want to put in 50 grand? And then you do that 10 times over. And then at that point, it converts to equity. Is that the way it works?
So no, you do get the money straight up. So there's no escrow in it. But what you do provide is, because they've come in at a risky stage in the early, is you provide a discount on the share price you're going to offer once you hit the whatever limit you set yourself where the note converts. So it's kind of yeah.
So that makes sense on a whole bunch of different levels, for making people feel a little bit more confident, for creating an environment where you can introduce scarcity to the deal, because you've got to get in before we hit this mark if you're going to get the special discount that other people are going to get. Now, you said it was family, friends, and fools. Well, family and friends, let's say. Was it immediate family? Was it immediate friends? Where did you go? And as an extension of that, what was the typical placement? Was it 5 grand, 20 grand, 50 grand?
Yeah, so we had quite the mix. I guess probably the average is around 25. And when I say family, friends, and fools, I guess network is more the word. So because we've done the MedTech's Got Talent Accelerator program, we got a bit of press around that. So people had seen us and approached us, and then we met our chairman of our board, who's still on our board, and he has his network. So it's kind of a broad family, friends network that we were able to tap into.
All right, now I'm going to take it back a step again, because I like what you said. So you've got a board member or a chairman of the board, and that was something that you organized before you'd raised capital as part of a strategic move to grow the business the way you wanted to grow it?
So what we did there was he was helping us from the start, so as a consultant basis, but with the pathway to being chair of the board. So it was part of the agreement that if we raised that capital, which he was helping us to do, that he would come on as chair of the board. Because one thing, as scientists, we don't have a broad network of people who are able to write these checks to invest in risky ventures. So you definitely need to, I guess, use the networks that other people have to help you.
If you're growing a business, you are going to need to be able to keep track of your client data. You are going to need to be able to collect leads at the top of the funnel. You are going to need to be able to pre-qualify those leads. You probably want to book more meetings with future clients. You need to elevate anticipation before those meetings using email. If the meeting goes well, you're going to need to follow up and take the money. You could sign up for 5 or 10 or 15 different online tools to make all that happen, or perhaps check out our show sponsor, b2b-.io, automate the client journey, get more B2B clients, and keep them forever.
Yeah, so of course you need to, use the networks that other people have as well. And Andrew Maxwell, chairman of our board, he's done this process multiple times. So he, one, has a track record. He knows what you need to do to raise money. So it was great to have him on board at the early stage to help us navigate that pathway.
Where did you meet him? Is he specifically a med guy, a med technology guy?
So he's got a range of industry expertise. So he's done ag tech, med tech, and he's also he's been an advisor for a high net worth family office as well. And yeah, we met him through after we did the MedTech's Got Talent program, which turns out to be very valuable. We actually had the person who was the judge in that is like a business mentor to many people. So he connected us to Andrew. So it really is about connections, networks at the early stage.
And finding people that you probably get along with well as well too, and you feel like they've got your back and you can trust them and all those other factors.
Yeah, definitely. Trust is a huge factor. So we did a fairly good period of getting to know each other as well, because if you're going to put someone as chairman of your board, you have to have a really good relationship with them.
I've heard it said before, when you're raising money from individuals, you really need to be thinking, is this someone I want to be friends with for at least 5 years?
Yes.
It's not quite a marriage, but it's not far off. Although I did read somewhere that, I don't know, 30% of marriages don't last 5 years. So maybe it's like more important than a marriage. Who knows? Let's move to the next round. So it was family, friends, and your broader networks, averaging about 25 grand. There was probably some smaller ones and some bigger ones. That's cool. You used the SAFE mechanism. Is that what it was called?
Safe Note, yeah.
Safe Note. Next round gets a little bit more serious. And after that, what was this, like $4 million or something quite significant?
Yeah, so as part of the Safe Note round, we then closed another $500,000. So at that point, we'd got 1 million. And then, yeah, the 4 million round did get a bit more serious. So at that stage, just as in this round, we work with a group called Henslow. And so they do kind of wealth management, capital markets, M&A transactions, as well as cap raising. And so that was a case of they've got their network of investors. And so they basically put forward propositions for them. And one of them was Hemideina.
Yeah, right. I should ask, where does the name come from? I mean, like I totally butchered it before and I was very self-conscious about it. So I made it worse, but where does the name come from?
Yeah, so Kate studied a native New Zealand tree wetter, and that's where she got the idea from, because she saw it's essentially a simplified human cochlea, and it adheres in the same range as humans. So it's the Latin name for the New Zealand tree wetter.
Ah, right. Okay. Hemideina. See, I'm getting better at it now. It's flowing naturally. Probably when I first saw cochlea for the first time, I went cochlear or something. Who knows? I would have got that wrong too. So who did sorry, what fund came up with the $4 million? Or sorry, it was Henslow, and they pulled together a bunch of different investors.
Yeah, so they managed the raise for us and kind of tapped into their networks. And then we've always had very good support from our existing investors as well throughout each of these rounds. So that, that really helps to build confidence as well.
Now, when we're raising money because we want to increase the value of the business. Yeah. So MedTech's a little bit different than most, because often when we say we're going to raise the value of the business, we're investing that money in getting more customers, more clients, more market share, more traction, so that we get to the next round. But the medical industry is a little bit different. What were their expectations? What are their expectations for the 4 million?
So the 4 million round, the last round, that was really about moving. So we'd really proven out the sound capture piece. So mimicking this insect system and turning it into an actual device. But we still have a few more steps. So we still had to show that we could transfer all that information wirelessly to an implant. So the wireless was then the next kind of technical risk area. So that 4 million was helping us to then bridge that and get some foundational IP and a proof of concept there. And then this 10 million round essentially puts all those subcomponents together. So we build the end-to-end system prototype, which will demonstrate on the bench against known industry standards and some animal trials to demonstrate the efficacy. So you made a good point that medtech it's a long journey, and there's many milestones that you have to hit to have the value inflection. And one benefit, I guess, of being in an industry that's 40 years old is that there really is a very well-trodden pathway to both kind of the FDA approval, the regulatory pathway, as well as the reimbursement pathway. So how you get paid, how much you're going to get paid. And so that's one thing that investors enjoy about the Hemideina proposition, is that we know exactly what performance metrics we need to meet, and also, what cost metrics we need to meet in order to have that revenue forecast and the growth potential. So it's a nicely laid out plan for Hemideina.
Is one of the benefits that are going to come out of this? We're always talking about USPs, competitive advantages, benefits, features. Does it sound like it's going to come out as something that's substantially cheaper than the options that are out there now? Is that one of the benefits?
So it's something that we think we can do. Until we get to scale, we don't know. But we do think that the device is simpler, so it should be less cost to manufacture. But yeah, until we get to that point, we can't really say that's a definite value proposition, but it's one that we've got on the list. And
you've also got to be very careful about what it is that you say in the medical industries. So this 10 million, I gather that it came from places. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Escala Partners, Intervalley Ventures, and Gioni Capital. Are they funds?
Yeah, so Intervalley Ventures is a venture capital fund located in Japan. And then Gioni Capital is both here and Japan, and Escala Partners is a kind of a wealth management group here in Melbourne. So
did that all come about off the back of your relationship with Henslow, where you got introductions from the first round of investors? How did those doors open?
Yeah, so that was Henslow, again, managing this round. So yeah, we have a great relationship with them. One of the corporate directors at Henslow is also on our board. And so we've had a close relationship with them over the past few years, and they've been along the journey with us. And yeah, so they reached out to their network on our behalf for this round.
Because I've had, obviously have lots of conversations with lots of different people raising capital in lots of different ways. And there's some people that at the moment, crowdfunding is very popular, but it sounds like the path that you've been going down, and I'd like to know whether this was a deliberate decision or not, is where you find investors that are going to help you with the next round so that the value will grow with each round, and they've got a vested interest in moving it forward to the next bunch of players.
Yeah, certainly before we even started the round, we looked at the possible target investor list, and then kind of narrowed down to who we would go to based on whether they've invested in the area before and whether they do follow-on funding, that kind of thing. And definitely our next round, if we raise another further private capital round, we'd be looking for people who have that medtech expertise and have invested in hearing treatment companies before, so they know more about the market and the journey as well, so they can give us that help as well as the financial help.
And now it's a lot more international as well too. So you just mentioned Japan and coming in from all sorts of the place now. Where to next with this? Do you have an idea of whether or not you will need to raise another round? Do you want to raise another round? As you said, there's a path that's fairly well trodden. Do you know where you're going next?
Yeah, so we've kind of mapped out what money we'll need to get us to market. And so certainly in terms of pathways to that, we're looking at, certainly exploring an IPO and that being on the ASX, or potentially a further private funding round, and that would be targeting US VC. But I think kind of the Asia Pac area, where certainly cochlear implants and aging and hearing loss, that's a real challenge for them, and therefore it kind of rings in terms of those specific geographies and what they're looking for, given that they have an older population.
How does market distribution work? Is it all through, if you come up with a better mousetrap, just the hospitals and the doctors they're just going to be the resellers for you if you tick all the boxes? Yeah,
it's definitely a case of, we have a lot of different customers, and certainly audiologists, that's your first touch point if you have hearing loss and you want to get referred for a cochlear implant, and it's the surgeon. So right now there's 4 players in the market, so they've got 4 brands to choose from. So it's about, we're going to be the 5th. So number one, we're disrupting on the product, but we also need to disrupt on the service delivery model as well.
I keep thinking about, you're going to need to create a buzz, but but that's probably what you don't want in people's ear after they've just put in some sort of implant, some sort of buzz. Valuation stuff. All right, the tricky stuff. Now, it sounds like you've got, it's a little bit easier if there's a well-trodden path, but how is it in the beginning when you're trying to explain to people what value you think a business should have when it's an unproven technology or it's an unproven idea? How did you manage, the balance between what you believe it can be, objective facts, what other people were telling you?
Yeah, I think it's always good to come to the table being fairly flexible. And so we came with, what our idea was of what we wanted to value the company at based on the opportunity in the market, the size of the market, and the technology and what that would enable. But I think it's good to have an open conversation with investors and get kind of a consensus view. And we've done that in each of the rounds, so that's, fair on both sides. There's certainly a point where, we know we have a value that we believe the company has. So you're not going to, I guess, go below that, but certainly being able to have those open conversations. And it's also part of giving the investor confidence that you do understand your value and why you've come to that number as well.
When you're sitting down with a Henslow, are you mapping what future rounds might look like as part of the discussion, so that you're not pricing yourself too high and then you end up having a down round, but you don't want to price yourself too low? Is that something that you do? Yeah,
definitely. And we, as a board, and so Kate and I are also on the board, we really did consider that, because, the next round, we have a rough idea of how much we want to raise, and therefore considering, if we go the IPO pathway, there's all these factors that you have to consider, as well as then what do you need to raise after. So you're quite right. We certainly factored in, what does the next round look like? So therefore, what does this round have to look like? And so that, like you say, we weren't overpricing this round, and then the next round makes it very hard to justify, an even higher amount.
So it sounds like a good path. I mean, like a lot of entrepreneurs, they say this again, entrepreneurship is a lonely journey. You've heard that said 1,000 times. You've obviously got a wonderful business partner where you've got where you've got complementary talents, and that works together really well. But then when it comes to this valuation, is it the people that you're surrounding yourself with that are helping you make sense of all that stuff? Because it's very difficult.
Yeah, so one of the big pieces of work we did was like looking at, forecasting out to when we think we're going to be on market and what value we'd have, what market share we could take. And that was all based on that historical view. So we looked at where there'd been fluctuations in market share over time and what had kind of underpinned that. So an example would be one of the competitors launched called a button processor, where with copper implants you have behind the earpiece and a wireless coil piece, and they basically put it all in one unit, so it's a bit more discreet and smaller size, and you could see the jump in market share.
Yeah, right.
So it was a way that we could tie back, well, this is a feature we have in terms of size and aesthetics, so you can tie that back to that market share amount, and that helped us build out a model. And there's still a lot of assumptions underlying that we will slowly chip away at as we get further along with the business. But I think that's a great place to start, and that provided us with a evaluation. And it's also something that you can explain to investors and you can take them through, and it gives them confidence in that you have thought about the valuation. And it's a risky business, medtech, so also the discount rate, that kind of thing.
It's been a crazy wild journey, considering that we're talking about from 2018 to 2001. So we're talking about a very short time frame. We are talking about some significant numbers. Do you think that the whole COVID thing helped you or slowed you down? Did that change things up for you, do you think?
Yeah, so in terms of the business itself, we operate in a lean way. So all of our suppliers are kind of outsourced and external, so that it didn't slow us down too much. It's obviously, as the country shut down, there was a bit of a delay, but we really kept moving at quite a good pace. I think raising capital is definitely quite challenging via Zoom. I think people have now started to get used to it, but one thing about your investors is you really want to build a good relationship with them. So, when you're meeting people for the first time over Zoom, that is a challenge to get people to know you well. So it's about offering multiple touch points as well. And one thing we did do was have the most comprehensive data room we could possibly imagine. And we did get great feedback on that, because at least it gives them the tools to dive into your business when they can't kind of sit face to face with you.
So I actually think it's worthwhile just touching on that for a second, because a lot of people don't know what a data room is. For firstly, it's not a physical room. Well, it might be. You might have like a filing cabinet in a room, and it's probably the history. People would come in and look at the filing cabinet. How did you manage your data room? Explain what it is and how did you manage it?
Yeah, so essentially it's an online repository where you're putting information about the company that's relevant to investors to help them with their due diligence. And so we chose a data room supplier, so we use Ideals. I think that's okay to share.
What is it?
Ideals.
Is that like a Dropbox or a box.com or something like that, or is it specifically around the idea of having a data room for raising capital?
Yeah, it's more specific for a data room for raising capital, and they give you a lot more support functions. So, if you need certain things changed, you can call them up rather than have to. So there's really good configurations around there, so you can keep your confidentiality as well. And because it's quite important that people can't just print things off, because you've got to remember it's for prospective investors who haven't necessarily signed NDA. Well, they sign an NDA to get into the data room, but if they're not then going to be on the share register, you've got to be careful of that content and make sure you can't print out hard copies left, right, and center.
That is exciting. There's a SaaS solution for everything. I mean, I'm sure that it began with a filing cabinet in a room. You'd give someone the keys, then it probably moved on to a Dropbox or a box.com, and now there are formal data rooms. By the way, when did you start pulling together that data room? Was that right in the beginning before you did your angel, or was that part of the Series A? How did that come to pass?
Yeah, so each round we have done a data room, and certainly the last 2 rounds it was using this kind of formal outsourced system where we got a bit more support. And generally, kind of 6 months before the launch, we'd start pulling together what it was we wanted to put in that data room and start populating it. So it's a big planning event in terms of populating that data room and what you're going to put in there.
Okay, finally, now the people, you've obviously surrounded yourself with some great people that are well connected. How did you find the journey of opening doors or getting in front of the right people? Did it happen organically, or did you have a process for that?
For the capital raise?
Yeah, for meeting the right people. And I mean, obviously a great start with the incubator accelerator that would have opened the doors. Was there a process, or did it happen very organically?
It was fairly organic. I think one thing about kind of the Melbourne medtech scene or the Australian medtech scene is it is quite small, and certainly the investment scene is fairly small. So people tend to reach out to their own networks and say, this is a great opportunity. So it's fairly organic, but we did have that support from Henslow as well, who had their own networks.
It is interesting just listening to people tell their different stories and the way that they go about it. There's involve everyone. There's the involve the small number of people. It's terrific. Now, all right, next 6 months, next 12 months, what's the big picture look like? What's exciting for the company? Anything that you'd like us to plug?
Yeah, so as you know, we'll be developing our prototype systems. That's going to be taking up a lot of our time before we then move on to really testing it and demonstrating the performance. But what we've been doing right now is building out the team. So part of this round was to help us grow the team and bring in specific strategic hires. And we've also established our advisory board. And so one place we'll be going to next year, now that the international borders have opened, is the Cochlear Implant 2022 conference. And so we'll be meeting some of our advisory board members there as well. So we're looking forward to that.
So guys and gals, particularly if you've got friends and family who are a little bit hearing impaired, keep your ear to the ground for, I just want to say it right, Hemideina. Did I get it right?
Oh, yes.
Yay. Thank you, Liz. Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much.